Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doors to Success, a podcast dedicated to helping newcomers to Canada unlock doors related to volunteering, extracurriculars, and jobs. My name is Malik.
And my name is Mohammed. We're honored to have Mathew Da Silva with us here on the podcast to discuss his experience working with newcomers and ways to bridge the gap between life back home and Canada.
Welcome, Matthew. Can you tell us a little bit about your current role and what you do for all the listeners and viewers watching?
For sure. Awesome. Well, first, let me start by saying thank you both for having me on the podcast. You both are amazing individuals, and I think that it's awesome that a podcast about newcomers is being run by two phenomenal people who were newcomers and have done amazing things since coming to Canada. So I applaud you both and feel so humbled that I get to be on your platform. Currently, I'm the operations manager for 4 departments in the School of the Arts, Media, Performance, and Design at York University. Basically, I manage all of the administrative staff that deal with the academic side of student work and running departments. So a lot of my staff are when you connect with your undergrad program assistants, people who are the admin assistants who deal with all the finances and departments and how money's spent, and also your first line of contact, which is like your front desk receptionist. So whenever you've ever need to get into a class or get permissions for things or talk to the chair of your department, I usually manage all the staff related to those processes. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know that when Mohammed and I used to live in Malton, we used to always go to the MCC and we'd always see you there, and we're part of Malton Youth Impact.
Yes.
How did you kind of work with newcomers when you used to work at the MCC?
Yeah, so I always thought of the Malton Community Center as like Malton's central hub. So the cool thing about Malton is it's right next to the airport. So literally when people come to one of the biggest airports in Canada, they're engaging with a community that is firstly so diverse and has a huge immigrant population. So Malton Community Center is that place where people get social services, where they can receive funding and can participate in programming. It's kind of central to a lot of public schools, middle schools, high schools, things like that. So in my role there, I used to be the youth engagement coordinator. So I'd often plan and execute programming that the city wanted to put on for communities. So whether that was recreation, social programming, mental health, and I'd liaise with a lot of different community partners to see that youth had a holistic experience. So, they didn't just play basketball, but they got to talk to someone about their mental health, or they had programs that helped with leadership and capacity building. So I know you both mentioned Malton Youth Impact, which was, one of those things where we got individuals who weren't just keeners, but individuals who wanted to make a difference in their community and, be able to give their input on how money should be spent on a municipal level, the resources that should be available for youth, and the changes that they want to see. And I very much appreciated having individuals who were newcomers on that committee because, having different types of voice in any process is always a cool thing. And I think that people from different countries and different walks of life bring a fresh perspective to any challenge and can help you see a solution from a different lens that I think is so important. So, there was those opportunities and a ton more. Probably can't think of everything right now, but a lot of our newcomer students would often interact with Malton Neighborhood Services, and they come to us at the community center, and then they go to different other pockets to receive, kind of that initial help to get started. So,
yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. I think that the work that you did with newcomers, but also youth, has left a lot of impact, including on Malik and myself. So I think that it really is something that drove us forward in many ways. And I think really the wealth of experience they've had with youth and even newcomers who are also youth sort of allowed you to have that perspective of the issues that youth face. And seeing that that's the case, we often hear a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions spread by the media about immigrants. But based on your observations, what do you consider to be the most common and prevalent stereotypes about newcomers and
Yeah, that
immigrants?
yeah, that
Yeah.
I think even beyond just youth, but immigrants and newcomers in general, like there is this common misconception that when people come from different countries that they're stealing our jobs, that they're not contributing to society, that there's people here that deserve, the opportunities and the resources that other people didn't work hard or pay their taxes for. And like there's this really, I think, toxic mindset that um, kind of creates this very us versus them dynamic that goes on. And when in fact you think about how many newcomers are running core services of our society, like, and I'm not even just talking about the ones that come here with huge education. Like you go to a building and you look at security services. You go to Tim Hortons and you see your server. You go to, a medical center and you see a support person, or, doctors. Like immigrants and newcomers occupy all walks of life and all walks of, our daily life. And, I think there's this common misconception that if we let in more people, that they're somehow gonna milk the system, or get all these resources undeservingly, and we have no idea what they're fleeing from, what kind of backgrounds they're coming from. Because there's a one thing there, I think the misconception too is between, not just newcomers and immigrants and but refugees. Like we think that if people aren't coming as a documented refugee and they're just coming as a newcomer, that they're not escaping, familial or spousal abuse from a different country. That doesn't necessarily qualify them to be a refugee, or a very difficult circumstance, right? So I think some of the best people I know, and some of the like I said, the core services that run our society are run by people from different countries. So yeah, I think we operate off of little to no knowledge sometimes, and kind of allow politicians and social media to dictate our viewpoint of people we know nothing about. So I think for me, getting to live in a community where every other person is almost a newcomer, it's given me like an eye-opening experience to meet some of the coolest people I know. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of like the misconceptions stem off of ignorance. Like I used
mhm.
to the first year, I always say this, but the first year some of my friends used to ask like if I lived under the pyramid, or if like
Wow,
certain things, like certain questions that kind of
that's
like
crazy.
I was shocked
Yeah,
to sort of receive. But yeah, it's just always ignorance and like the lack of education,
yeah,
because we just kind of receive information and not really think about whether it's like true or not.
for real. Well, the funny thing is, I am born in Canada, but like generations ago, we were all we don't own this land. Like, there's
Oh,
indigenous peoples that own this land, right? So no one can truly ever say that, I deserve to be here, because if you think about Canadian history, it's pretty dark and scary how we've come to inhabit this land. But I think I was watching a podcast earlier, and they were talking about this idea of like nationalism and what it means to be like Canadian, what it means to be American. And I think North America has this very twisted view of nationalism. Like, um, I was in one of my master's classes when I was a student at York, and he asked, "What does it mean to be Canadian?" And everyone was saying, freedom and democracy and all this kind of stuff. And when it got to me, I said, "I don't know what it means to be Canadian. I might know what it means to be a Maltonian. I know what it might mean to be a Mississaugan, but like if you ask me if I know how people live in Vancouver, in Saskatchewan, in Newfoundland, and PEI, like you think about how diverse life is across an entire nation, it's very hard to say I know what it means to be Canadian. So it's funny that people become so unified and divisive over these very topical issues, and then they're Canadian. But then when it comes to their everyday life, like I really much associate with my community. Like I've only known for the majority of my life what it means to be a person from Malton. Not that you have to be a type of person, but this is what I've been continually exposed to, right? And I'm sure for you both, like the majority of your life, wherever you lived, where you grew up, like you might be from a country, but there might be that community or that village or that town that you were born in that has that very distinct feel and vibe, right? So it's very hard to just say, oh, these people don't deserve to be here, because I don't even know what it means to be Canadian, and I've been born here, right? What does that even mean, right? So you think about it that way, and you start to realize that we're all just human, and we're all just people, and I think location is such a barrier in people's mind, and it's like this thought of barrier that we don't even question, is it even a useful reason why we want to stop or start things, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it's like people always just find a way to sort of place barriers on certain things and marginalize people because of the whole idea that they don't really understand, like you mentioned, where they come from and certain things that they go through. But I just wanted to kind of bring us back to the point where I remember going to like the MCC, and I was talking to Muhammad, and Muhammad was like, "Hey, come to the Youth Impact, Multi Youth Impact." I was in I think I was in grade 7 at the time, and I thought it would be a good way to kind of connect with a lot of people and like make new connections. So what advice would you kind of give to newcomers, specifically teenagers who are looking to like make connections and kind of get started on their success journey?
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of what I just ended off talking about before with the previous question about this idea of community. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you two, like since coming here, you've probably found pockets of communities, like, your youth community, your friend community, your education community. I know, Mohammed, you've done like conferences at York, like you have different communities within larger communities. So, um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
being able to find these communities and these families and these bodies of resources are very helpful. No matter what part of society or area you're in, it's people that drive these things, right? So, um, you can exhaust trying to find the best resources, and you still might not find, what you need. So, developing relationships with people in different areas is always so important. So, the fact that you both, were already in your high school community and had resources there, just walked over the street to the community center, and it opened up doors for you, or just even relationships or conversations where you could learn more and grow more and understand the different aspects of even municipal life and recreation life, and get to meet people there that maybe are still friends today or contacts today, right? So um it's very easy when you come here and to just kind of be very insular, because you're like very shy and you're very scared. And honestly, I commend people who come here and learn English as a second language. Like we think in Canada, like we are the center of the world, or in America, we're the center of the world. For people who have a native tongue to come here, learn English, and then still dominate over people who were born here, like that's a success in itself. So I can understand people kind of want to just keep their heads down and do their thing. But even whether you're a newcomer or not, I think the greatest thing I could have ever done for my life was to put myself out there, meet people, network, and then develop this kind of resource toolkit of, okay, when I need to go for mental health, I know where to go in Malton, or in my community. Where I need to go for social assistance or recreation, or the best place to eat, like we learn life through these different pockets. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest things you can do as a newcomer, is just get out there, meet people, diversify your experience. Don't be afraid, and you'll find good, you'll find bad people, but I think it just takes that first step.
Absolutely. And Matthew, I mean, you mentioned a lot of great points of the issues that many new immigrants face when they come here, like for example, language barriers, things relating to connecting with community, having that community feel when they first come in here, and sort of, I mean, I brought up that example of like how, for example, newcomers come here because they cannot connect as much with community. Sometimes it's just like, they want to keep their heads down. They sort of, want to continue working, that kind of thing. And these are all issues that face immigrants and newcomers. But I wanted to pick your brains a little bit more on sort of the specific issues that face immigrants who come here as young adults. So what do you think are these main issues that face immigrants, specifically with kind of young adults that come here at that age of, getting into high school or getting to middle
Yeah.
school, and trying to navigate the system over here?
Yeah, I think so I was able to see it when I was a youth worker, but even more so now being in the education sector. Um, like students who live here, I don't know if they realize how much like international students are like subsidizing their education because, a normal 1 year tuition fee for a student at York University might be like 7 to 8 grand, but for like an international student, that could be like 30 grand. You know what I mean? So, like that kind of boggles my mind, the idea that there's differential kind of access to education. And then also the fact that, newcomers have to work 2 to 3 times harder to get jobs. And then they're also having to battle the fact that they have to get PR, permanent residency, right? And like you have to do all of these things to kind of maybe help your application look good so that you can get PR. And it feels like in the moments where you're a young person and you should really just only be focused on your education and your career, you're having to also focus on like your status. Like that's very mentally taxing and draining. And I feel like you have to mature a lot faster than other young people who are kind of like coddled into never having to do anything that serious for their life because there's always people to kind of hold their hand through the process. So I feel like newcomers mature a lot faster, which can be a good thing, but can also be very stressful, right? Again, in those very like transitional formative years where they should really just get to be a young person and get to be I don't want to say a kid, but like get to just have fun, right? There's so much more to worry about. And even myself being someone who's worked in multiple organizations and hired, I often have sat beside colleagues, not where I am right now, but even before. And like reasons for not wanting to hire people is like you'll look at a resume and this person has 10 experiences from like, India or from Pakistan or like from, wherever they're from. And then it's just like they're so overqualified and they're trying to get the smallest starter kind of job. And that person will be like, yeah, but they don't have Canadian experience. And like you start to wonder, okay, they might not have Canadian experience, but like for me, when I'm trying to hire people as a manager now and as a leader, I'm looking for character and whether they're trainable and coachable and whether they're humble enough to submit under someone's leadership and be able to be moldable. And whereas a lot of people just look at their resume and in that I have literally seen people look at resumes and it's like 7 seconds later, okay, yeah, no. And then you'll see some people literally look at the last name and they're just like, yeah, no. And you're like, why? Right? So I think with my experience with hiring, some of the best candidates were newcomers who, yeah, there might have been a language barrier or there might have been a learning curve, but they were phenomenal once coached. So I think that there's this, when we talk about like inequities and racism and like differential treatment, it can be so masked behind these processes that we're not privy to seeing. Like you don't get to see, like you think that you apply for a job and you're putting in your resume and like they have like this really smart keyword system that pulls out this and that and it's analyzing and they're spending sometimes it could be literally as arbitrary as we have 500 applications. If I don't see like that they have Canadian experience or like we're not saying these things out loud, but it's this bias that operates in our mind. And then you think about all the people who are in the no pile. I wonder how many of them were because they have a name that doesn't seem Canadian and they don't have experience in this country, right? So Yeah, I think that's like there's the realized and the unrealized barriers that newcomers face. So it's tough, I think, being a young newcomer because you have so much to have to worry about, and you have to almost work 2 times harder. And you think about, and this is my last point on this question, but you think about how women, even Canadian women, complain about, having to work 2 times harder than men just to get similar positions. Imagine how much that would be for a woman who's also a newcomer. Like there's so many layers that can really make it difficult to navigate life. So when people think, "Oh, why is this person lazy? Why didn't they get a job?" Like you have no idea the things that operate against them just because of the color of the skin, the place they're born in, and where their experience originated from, right? So
Yeah, and I mean, one of the really interesting points that you mentioned there was specifically a point on sometimes these objective quote unquote measures that companies put in, like these algorithms, these sort of evaluation systems that filter out resumes. And I think to myself, because I remember in a lecture in a course that I took a couple of years back, actually, and it talked about all these like artificial intelligence systems or evaluation systems that go like, well, yeah, we're going to evaluate based on certain algorithms, but at the same time, usually when they're designed by people who have certain perspectives who implemented these perspectives into these systems.
yeah, yeah,
So I think to myself, well, you say that it's subjective, but then it's not actually that objective. It's not actually
yeah,
sort of as you claim it to be because it was designed by a human being who made it in the first place
yeah.
to be that way. So it's like mind boggling to me sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I always have to, like, even in that example and a lot of things in my life, like, I'm not saying I'm perfect. Like, I have to continually challenge myself to be like, where is bias operating in what I say, what I do, and the decisions that I make, right? And we don't realize them until we actually, kind of humble ourselves and say, okay, why am I, choosing this person, or why am I not choosing this person when it comes to hiring, or like these very processes that can quickly become very us versus them. Like I'm team this, I'm team that, right? So yeah, I think it's made me be more mindful of that when it's the smallest thing, or like if I'm you're going to a store and you're nicer to a certain kind of customer service representative, or like why are you like that way, like why are you acting a certain way, oh like am I just mad at this person because they did something wrong, or is this bias operating in my head because I'm like, oh, they're an immigrant, they don't know anything, you know what I mean? Like we have to unlearn, I guess, these societal ways of viewing other people in life, and I don't know. It's like, FIFA just happened. And like you can see how like as much as people love the sport, like I am team this, right? And then like any other team is like inferior to me. And that's how we are sometimes in life, right? Like if you are not Canadian, then like you're not, like you're a subpar human almost, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think you like mentioned like a really good point about the different barriers that even like because of like the different social factors, the different social groups that we all belong to, plus being newcomers, plus being immigrants, we have to face more and have to work harder because we have to go through the different systems. And in order for like municipal and provincial governments to kind of recognize that newcomers, or specifically like youth newcomers, need extra support and need extra help, how do you think they could implement more programs, or what in what ways would you change the programs that they implement?
Yeah. Well, I think um one of the things that you guys were a part of was the impact group, and having programs where program design, and even when you were just talking about Mohammed, that um, that system to evaluate jobs, like these things need to be informed and at least have the voice of the people that it's going to interact with. So if you're going to create programs for newcomers, you should consult newcomers. Not just ones that are currently young newcomers, but like people who are young adults or adults who have been young people at a certain point in time. Like you need to do your research. You need to immerse yourself in their life and what matters to them, because when people come here, we probably often, say they need this. but like, how do you know that they need this? You think that, oh, because they just come here, they're gonna love free programs and free basketball. Like, who knows if that's even what's on their mind or what's their need, right? Like, you might be addressing, over addressing one need and like under addressing another, right? So I think consultation is a huge part of designing any program. um, I think like also being willing to change a program if it's not working. Like, a lot of times programs are developed by like these teams or individuals who it's like, this is like my child project. Like, this is my project where like I've put all my effort into, and like I don't care what anyone says, like it's a good program, but you're not willing to be humble enough to change it if it's not serving the purpose it was intended to. And I even had to realize that when I was a youth worker, like, okay, it's cool to have PS4s in Chillzone, but like, what are we actually accomplishing here? Like, yes, they're having fun, they're having a space, but then you start to see numbers dropping off, and you start to wonder, okay, has it outlived its purpose? What else could we be doing in here? Maybe we can do it on certain days of the week, so we're not oversaturating people with just video games, and then they get bored of that. You know what I mean? And I think having that mindset as people who are developing programs will benefit you, because you're always bringing something new and fresh to something that's supposed to serve people who have lives that deal with things that differ on a daily basis, right? So, if I'm continuing just to play PS4, that's not going to help young people learn how to manage their finances or get ready for university, or, prepare themselves for applying to college or our jobs and things like that. So, yeah, I think consultation and just that willingness to redesign based off of what's important maybe at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to your point, it's like, yeah, we have to have that courage to be able to reevaluate whatever it is that we've been working with, and to challenge the status quo and all these things. And
Yeah.
I really commend the fact that you brought all these points up. And thanks a lot, Matthew, for a really great discussion. And thank you so much for being here with us today. It was a pleasure having you and to discuss all these very important topics with you. And to everyone who's listening to us, thank you for being here. And also stay tuned for our next episodes. And if you want to check out our previous episodes, you can find it on YouTube and Spotify by checking out our Instagram page at doors.to.success. Thanks a lot, Matthew, for being here. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Awesome. You guys are awesome. I'm so happy for you guys, and I just wish you the best of success as you continue to see this grow. And I mean, you both are doing like so many things already in life. I know you both. You guys are like probably doing a million things, but the fact that you're pouring into the lives of others, and not just newcomers, but even to change the perspective of people who live here, I think that's so valuable and so important. So, thank you for the time. Thank you for having me on,
Thank you
and
so much.
I wish you nothing but the best as you guys continue to become the amazing people that you're growing into being. So.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Matt.
Thank you so much. Yeah.